In 1992, a German toxicologist named Svetlana Balabanova ran a routine test on tissue samples taken from Egyptian mummies, and the results made absolutely no sense. She found traces of nicotine and cocaine inside bodies that were thousands of years old, compounds that come from tobacco and coca plants, both of which only grow naturally in the Americas, a continent ancient Egypt supposedly had no contact with whatsoever. The scientific community reacted exactly the way you'd expect, with disbelief, accusations of contamination, and demands for the samples to be retested from scratch. Other labs ran the same tests on different mummies and got the same impossible result anyway. Decades later, the mystery still isn't fully solved, with theories ranging from contamination during embalming to genuinely unexplained ancient trade routes. But here's the part that actually matters for this video. Whether or not those specific compounds belong there, your ancestors were already inhaling mind-altering substances through methods so deliberate, so engineered, that a modern vape would honestly strike them as a downgrade. Picture a pharaoh holding your vape device for the first time, turning it over in his hands, completely unimpressed. Not because the concept is foreign to him, because the effort behind it is insultingly small. Your ancestors didn't inhale anything by accident. The blue lotus, soaked in wine and burned as incense during religious ceremonies, released its compounds into the air of crowded temple halls, meaning entire rooms full of priests and worshippers were breathing in mild psychoactive smoke during specific rituals timed to the flower's own daily cycle. Opium, confirmed through residue analysis on ceramic juglets studied by archaeologist Robert Merrilees, was burned and inhaled as much as it was swallowed, used in medical treatments where smoke delivery worked faster than waiting for a tincture to digest. Incense burned constantly in temples wasn't purely about scent either. Certain resins used in these ceremonies carried their own mild sedative properties, meaning the simple act of standing inside a temple during a long ceremony came with a chemical experience built directly into the architecture of worship itself. Even funerary rites involved smoke meant to be inhaled deeply. Resins and herbs burned over the body and around mourners, designed to alter the emotional state of grief itself, calming the living down during one of the most overwhelming moments a person could experience. Physicians documented which resin worked for which ailment. Priests memorized which hour of the day called for which blend. And none of that knowledge survived by accident. It survived because someone, generation after generation, decided it was worth writing down, testing, and passing forward. None of this happened with the push of a button. Growing the plant, harvesting it at the right moment, drying it correctly, burning it at the right temperature, timing the ritual to the right hour, gathering the right people in the right room facing the right direction. This was a full system, refined over centuries, requiring real botanical knowledge passed down generation after generation, from priest to apprentice, physician to student. Mistakes mattered too. A wrong dosage or a poorly dried batch could harm the very person the ritual was meant to heal, which meant every detail of the process carried real consequences. The kind of stakes that force a culture to take a practice seriously rather than treat it as casual habit. Your vape requires you to charge a battery and press it against your lips, with the worst-case outcome buried somewhere inside a chemical composition you'll likely never read. Now think about what a pharaoh would actually notice first if you handed him that device. The smoke comes out instantly, every single time, with zero variation, zero ritual, and zero connection to anything sacred. There's no flower involved. There's no fire to tend. There's no temple, no priest, no specific hour of the day when the act means something beyond the act itself. He'd probably turn it over a few more times, looking for the part that means something, the carving, the inscription, the connection to a god, and find nothing but plastic and a tiny glowing light. To someone whose entire relationship with inhaled substances was built on patience, timing, and meaning, your vape wouldn't look advanced. It would look hollow, a machine that delivers the physical sensation while stripping out every single layer of significance that made the original ritual worth doing in the first place. He might even ask the obvious question first. Where is the flower this came from? And you'd have to explain that there isn't one, that the flavor was designed in a lab to taste like a fruit that was never actually inside the device at any point. This is where toxicologist Svetlana Balabanova's strange 1992 discovery becomes relevant again, because it points towards something your ancestors may have actually achieved that modern science still can't fully explain. A trade network sophisticated enough to potentially move plant compounds across continents that supposedly had no contact at all. if those nicotine and cocaine traces really do indicate exposure to American plants. Your ancestors weren't just engineering their own local substances with precision, they may have been importing entirely new ones from places the rest of the ancient world assumed Egypt couldn't possibly reach, suggesting a level of curiosity and reach that still embarrasses parts of the historical record today. Either way, modern researcher Maciej Goniewicz, who has spent years analyzing the chemical makeup of vape aerosol at Roswell Park, has documented something your ancestors never had to deal with at all: unpredictable contamination, inconsistent dosing between devices, and chemical byproducts created by the heating element itself that have nothing to do with the substance someone actually intended to inhale. Your ancestors knew exactly what was in their smoke, because they grew it, prepared it, and burned it themselves, batch by batch, generation after generation, refining the process every single time something went wrong, until the result became reliable enough to trust with religious ceremonies and medical treatments alike. The kind of trust that can only be earned through centuries of careful, documented repetition. You don't always know what's in yours, because a machine assembled it for you in a factory you've never seen, using a recipe you'll never read, and the only quality control most users ever perform is glancing at a label someone else wrote, on packaging designed to look reassuring rather than to actually explain anything, optimized for shelf appeal rather than transparency about what's actually being heated and inhaled. So if a pharaoh stood there holding your vape, glancing between the device and the temple behind him, the verdict probably wouldn't be admiration. It would be confusion, followed by something close to pity. That an entire civilization capable of building circuit boards and lithium batteries somehow ended up with less ritual, less intention, and less actual understanding of what they were putting into their own lungs than people who were doing this with nothing but fire, water, and a flower from the riverbank. He spent his whole life surrounded by physicians who could name every plant they prescribed, priests who could explain exactly why a particular smoke was burned at a particular hour, and a culture that treated altering your own mind as something serious enough to write down, test, and refine across centuries of careful observation. You'd be handing him a device whose actual ingredients most users couldn't list from memory. Manufactured by a company whose name they'd struggle to spell, designed primarily to taste like candy rather than to mean anything at all, sold in colors chosen by a marketing team rather than symbols chosen by a priesthood. There's a strange kind of regression hiding inside that comparison. Your ancestors started with raw plants and built an entire systematic, repeatable, religiously meaningful practice around them, layer by layer, generation by generation, until the act of inhaling something carried the same weight as any other major religious observance. Somewhere between then and now, an enormous amount of technological progress happened: batteries, microchips, mass manufacturing, global supply chains, and yet the actual ritual surrounding inhalation got smaller, not bigger. The tools got more advanced while the meaning attached to using them nearly disappeared completely, reduced to a flavor name and a battery percentage displayed on a tiny screen. It's not that your ancestors were more sophisticated than you in every way. Plenty of what they believed about the world has since been proven wrong. It's that they never had the option of separating the action from its meaning the way modern manufacturing makes effortless. And maybe that separation cost more than anyone bothered to calculate at the time, trading thousands of years of accumulated ritual and understanding for the convenience of a single button press. They built temples around the smoke they breathed. You built a battery. So here's a question worth sitting with. If a civilization with no electricity at all managed to turn inhaling something into a sacred, intentional act, what do you think that says about how disconnected your own version of it has become? Tell me what you think in the comments.